everyone, my name is Sarah Sypak and I'm an associate editor with Workforce Magazine. Thank you so much for joining us today for our ongoing coverage of the 5th anniversary of the Affordable Care Act. I'm joined today by Rachel Cutler Shim, who is counsel at the law firm Reed Smith. Rachel, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, over these last 5 years, you have spent a lot of time helping employers navigate through a range of issues surrounding the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. So based on that experience, do you think that employers were prepared to deal with the changes that the ACA legislation required? Did they know what they were getting into?
Well, I do think employers were used to having regulation associated with their health and welfare plans. Obviously, before the Affordable Care Act, you had things like ERISA and HIPAA and COBRA. But I don't think they were ready and used to having the federal government really be involved in the day-to-day operations of their health and welfare plans. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, the federal government had really stayed out of regulating the content of group health plans. And so I think it was a big surprise and something that employers have to get used to, this idea of the federal government being really involved in the day-to-day operation of group health plans. So I think they were ready and that they were used to regulation. But I think that they weren't ready in the fact that the federal government was really now poking its nose into what kind of benefits had to be offered and who they have to be offered to. I also think that they were used to a lot of regulation on the retirement plan side that was very difficult and complicated. I don't think they were used to that on the health and welfare side, so that also took them a little bit by surprise.
Great. So aside from kind of the cultural change of what to expect in terms of regulation, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about biggest challenges. So once they started looking at that legislation, what were the biggest hurdles from the get-go?
Well, I certainly think for a lot of employers, the insurance market reforms took a little getting used to. It was definitely a cultural shift in that plans had annual limits, lifetime limits, had been able to have pre-existing condition exclusions. So a lot of those provisions required some modifications of the plan design and then also modifications of their communications, SPDs, plan documents. Everything that they were used to sort of communicating to employees had to change. They had to make big shifts in their SPDs and documents. So I think that was definitely something that was hard for them. Obviously, new requirements like the SBCs and the reinsurance fees and the PCORI fees were all something that, these were additional requirements. They had to be prepared. They had to prepare forms for these fees as well. So they had to have new hours and new time directed towards those activities. So I think that was difficult for employers, and I've certainly worked with employers on those issues. And then, of course, now we have the employer shared responsibility payment, which is very difficult. It's confusing for employers to understand. It requires a lot of decisions, and it's going to require a lot of record keeping and also reporting going forward.
Great. And so in terms of your role in all this, how do you step in to help employers deal with all these challenges?
Well, I've certainly helped a lot of employers just try to understand the overall act. I mean, sometimes a lot of this is going to impact the day-to-day administration, and as an attorney, I like to try to understand that and get involved as much as possible, but I am not there on the front lines every day administering plans. So what I like to try to do is, help employers understand the big picture, all of the different areas this is going to impact, and then help them answer those questions on a day-to-day basis. But I've certainly helped them understand the insurance market reforms, the impact it has on their plan documentation requirements, their SPDs, helped a lot of employers draft SBCs model, summary benefits of coverage and modifications. Certainly helped employers work through the reinsurance fee forms and the PCORI forms, understanding how to calculate the fees, because that itself was a challenge. Mm-hmm. And now I've been working with a lot of employers to understand what the measurement period is going to be for the shared responsibility payment, whether they're going to use a look back or a monthly determination period and those kinds of things. And then, like I said, they have to go back and actually implement that, which is, even more of a challenge with the day-to-day administration.
Absolutely. Well, this definitely sounds like something that's far from over. There's still a lot to be done. But thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your experience over these past 5 years.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.